Good?
Very. Extremely.
All right. Matt, thanks for joining me today, not us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm kind of sad. I feel like I'm getting half the experience. So, damn it, half the experience. I feel like you'll just have to do twice as good or something.
I will, but the good part is I'm the better half host, so it's like...
You're not alright, I'm not alright. I like to drink and smoke to take away the pain, and you don't remember all your mistakes.
We want to give you guys a quick life hack recommendation. If you're from the Toronto area, GTA, our lovely listeners, we want to help you out here. As of late, we've been recording a lot more, spending a lot more time in the studio, and because of our lives are a little bit hectic, we're in and out. We never really have snacks and food here, so we partnered up with Tiggy, who is a Canadian app, and recently came to Toronto, and they are an on-demand food delivery service.
And also, you can get your COVID test and basically anything else you need. They got a variety of unique products. Basically, anything that you might want last minute, you can go on the app. It's 15 to 30 minute delivery. Yeah, you heard that right. 15 to 30 minutes. We literally order it when we get in the studio before an episode. And before we even sit down to start recording, our food is here.
I'd say even for us, it's always come closer to the 15 minutes than the 30. Like, we'll order it, and before we can, as soon as we sit down, take our jackets off, our guest gets here, like, the stuff is here. And, like, keeps us, we get drinks, snacks, anything we really need to kind of, keep us going, it comes. The best part is there's no fees, no subscriptions. It's actually amazing. They have fresh products, and we actually, we don't waste stuff here. We order what's needed every episode, and, we go through it, and then the next time we're back in here, we order more. We don't waste stuff because it's sit here and go bad, and it's been a lifesaver.
And since we love you guys so much, we're going to give you guys a promo code. You knew this was coming. PAL30. Yeah, PAL30. P-A-L 30. Gives you 30% off your first 3 orders. Yep. Bingo. Boom. Go do it.
Guys, and not only that, the price of everything's going up. You're going to save 30%. What a no-brainer. Thank us later. Don't even thank us. Just go and do it. Have a great day.
We'll put the download link in the bio, in the description. So click the unique link. You can download it. Again, and the promo code is PAL30 for 30% off your first 3 orders. Now get ready for this fire episode. Let's go.
I'm kidding. For anybody listening, just so you guys know, it's only George today, and I'm obviously with Matt here from Mt.Joy. Ricky got stuck in Houston. I know that you guys said you had kind of heard what happened, but essentially, my pal Ricky, he's the single one of the two of us, so he's still living his best life, just kind of on a whim, doing whatever. And a buddy of ours messaged both of us saying he had extra tickets to the Final Four in New Orleans yesterday, or Saturday. So the guy hopped on a last-minute flight, flew to Houston, drove 5 hours to New Orleans, watched the game, drove 5 hours back to New Orleans, and then got stuck. 5 hours back to Houston. And got stuck in Houston. So he is actually still there now. He slept in the airport last night. And
ooh,
yeah.
That is the true Houston experience. Really good.
Have you ever had any bad airport experiences on
not specifically in Houston, but I've had plenty of bad airport experiences. But yeah, I don't know. The Houston airport has a specific ring to it that sounds brutal.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Fun to go to the Final Four. It seemed like there was some good games.
Are you a basketball fan at all? Sports?
Yeah. I definitely I don't watch college basketball as much, but when March Madness rolls around, it piques my interest a little bit.
Okay. What would you say, you're more of an NBA fan or
Yeah, I'm a Sixers fan.
I was just gonna guess.
Yeah, I grew up in Philadelphia, so I do all the Philly sports. Which I assume this podcast has a Toronto bent, so
a little bit.
I'll just say it because it's true. The Raptors just own the Sixers in this way that I really love Toronto, so I can sort of live with that and accept it. But yeah, just good for you guys.
I appreciate it. It's I never really had I never had anything against the 76ers until you guys had Allen Iverson. And we won't talk too much about sports, but the one thing I want to touch on, obviously you guys are from Philly. Allen Iverson, obviously back in the day, didn't treat us well when we had Vince Carter, but definitely seeing Kawhi get redemption against them was pretty satisfying, especially like when you hear things like Philly fans are pretty ruthless and all that stuff. So knowing that kind of we've had the last laugh so far, it does feel kind of good. I'm not lying.
Ball is still bouncing on the rim as far as I'm concerned.
It was definitely a crazy one. Ricky and I are both pretty big basketball fans. Like you're right, Toronto fans in general. But and then during the playoffs, we have season tickets. I went to a few of the games before that, and that one I was like, I know what they've done to us, and Philly's always beaten us, so I didn't go. And a buddy of mine messaged me saying like, you missed the greatest game. I mean, I watched it, but it was.
We have our Canadian agent is our friend Himmelfarb, and he texted me like, it felt like he texted me right as the ball like went through the hoop, like he was so ready to just be like,
just to get fired up.
Yeah, it was good for you guys.
Did you, I guess, grew up in Philly? I think I was like reading you grew up in Philly, moved out to the West Coast.
Yeah, grew up in Philadelphia, and then followed my girlfriend from college. She was from Los Angeles, out to LA, lived there for a little while.
And was it just because of that? Did the music bring you over as well? Like, or was it?
Yeah, so I guess I was playing music in college. I'd studied music in school, but no, I wasn't going out there to like make it in music. I hadn't done enough. There wasn't really anything to go out there for music for. I'd played around and tried to make it work, but at that point, I'd done that since high school. So it'd been, 8 to 10 years of like really trying to find a foothold of fans to see me play live and stuff. And I wouldn't say I was like retiring from music or anything like that, but I definitely was like looking for a real job and for the first time. And LA wasn't this like, I think there's a misconception that I like went out to LA to like find my acting / music career or something, but it wasn't like that.
That's it. That's actually, I didn't know that. That's pretty interesting. Like, I mean, that's, again, people think that you go out there to like find something. So you went out there without the intention of finding it and found it.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought, I can keep writing songs and I'll be in a good city to, maybe meet some people and share my music. But no, I was working a data entry job right when I got there, which was like tangentially related to music, but I was like putting in the royalty payments for people on Spotify and various like DSPs and just, and then I started going to law school night classes. So, on the weekends I was writing music, and when I got home I was writing, but it was really just the hobby and for the love of it. And then, I was just working in Los Angeles in completely unrelated fields for the most part.
Like, did you just writing it like for the enjoyment of it, or kind of in the free time? Like, do you feel that it changed how you looked at it? Like, was it less of like, let me put a lot of time and effort into this? Was it more, whatever comes of it, let me just kind of throw my thoughts on? Like, I don't know if that makes sense. Did it change your approach and how you went about it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think probably there's an element of like, for one, I wasn't pushing, and I think there's something to that. I think a lot of artists, I mean, there's a whole sort of train of thought. Wow, sorry. That the first album for artists is typically this, good album or whatever, a great album, and then there's like the sophomore slump or something like that. And I think it's the same idea where it's like, a lot of artists get put in this crucible of like, make something awesome. To put that to sports or whatever, it's like the clock's running down and you have to hit the 3-pointer versus like you're up 30 and you're wide open and you just, how to shoot. So you knock it down. And I think there's a little bit of that, I was wide open and there was no score. There was no clock. It was just sort of just make some shots, put some shots up. And, I'm not going to make this an entire sports analogy podcast, but, popped into my head.
That's really cool to hear. I mean, to your point, it seems like a lot of people like maybe it's, I don't know, as an outsider, maybe it's that perception of now with whether it's social media, whether it's YouTube, whatever it is, can make something pop overnight and make something go overnight. You know, and maybe it's puts that pressure and that impetus on people. Like, you know, I made a song. You know, why isn't the single going viral? Why isn't it blowing up? Why isn't it hitting the top of the charts and all that stuff? And I'm assuming that can probably put like undue stress on people and, you know, cloud your mental capacity because you're not thinking, like, again, you're not open. You're not thinking clearly. It's not like, oh yeah, this is what I do every day. It's what I love to do. It should come naturally to me.
Yeah, I think so. You know, and I think some amount of pressure is probably good. You know, that's what they say anyway. But I think as much as you can block that stuff out and just try to remember that you're doing something that hopefully should exist outside of the sphere of like work, even though of course it takes a lot of hard work. But yes, whatever you can do to, like, you know, I know people go, you know, they go out into the wilderness. We've gone to like Montana on the last record and just try to separate yourself from the sort of industrial complex that is the streaming, whatever, all that stuff.
Yeah, very cool. How'd you like Montana?
Oh, I love it. I mean, we know someone with a cabin sort of like an hour down, even like a dirt road once you get off the main road. And yeah, it's just, there's something about like getting into the where there's no lights kind of feeling. And yeah, it just takes a few days, but I feel like then you like become more human almost. Like there's a different speed in that world for sure.
You kind of like reconnect and just, again, like forget about the hustle and bustle and all the things that really don't matter at the end of the day.
Truly. Yeah. I mean, this is all sort of, yeah, there's like I always think about it as like there's various levels of zoom that you can have on your perspective. And I feel like we get super zoomed in on when you live in a city, especially on the day to day and how you're going to make your podcast bigger or your album bigger or how your career is going to go and what that's going to mean for you. And then at the end of the day, you can always just zoom out and be grateful for the things that you have and grateful for the earth and then grateful for
Absolutely.
The universe and all these things that you really should be focusing your gratitude on.
100%. That's actually a good way to put it. Like, you just kind of like, if you don't zoom out often to see what everything that's going on around you, you just kind of look at, you know, I need to do this better and that better and all that. And I actually read something the other day. It's like, you know, you should be grateful for where you are, because if you look back 5 years ago, I mean, if you're working hard, doing what you love, 5 years ago, you is probably, sorry, I just realized I left all these like snacks in the front of the shot. I didn't even realize there's like Oreos in the middle of this, in the front here. Anyway, sorry, I don't completely forgot to take those down. Whatever, we'll leave them part of the shot now. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there on
no
that.
Worries.
But yeah, is it, you know, 5 years ago, you'd be looking at it and saying, wow, like this, my life's amazing. It's 5 years later, it's what I wanted. You know, I have a house or I have a podcast or an album topping the charts and all that stuff. But when you're like in the moment, going micro day to day and just looking at those micro actions, you're not stepping out to kind of take a 40,000 foot view of it. Sure. And really see, like, does anything really matter? Like, I am where I need to be. If something's going to go wrong, could be good, could be bad, whatever it is.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's important. Otherwise, you know, you get stuck in the day to day. And I mean, I think that's why we as a society, among other reasons, of course, like just struggle so much with anxiety, is like we could all use a little perspective shift from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you guys stay out in Montana to write the entire, like, was it
No,
the album,
and
or?
this was the last record. You know, with COVID, writing this, we just went there for maybe a week or so, the last record cycle.
Okay.
But with COVID, everything was a little bit weird. You know, traveling wasn't really a thing. So a lot of this record was actually written in, Sam and I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and we, we were looking for a place, or there's a practice space or, you know, just a place we could go and turn up amps and make noise. And we actually found, this woman rented out a barn on her property. And we rented it out for like 6 months and would just treat it like a job, just go there every day. And it was, you know, it had like a nice stream running through the back of it kind of vibe. And, you know, I guess it emulated Montana in a you know, it's still like the suburbs of Philadelphia. It wasn't remote or anything, but, yeah, it was a good space to be able to, bring our ideas every day. And, that's where most of this record, I mean, you know, there were some other places where things were written, but that's where a lot of it was put together.
Very cool. And you said the two of you went out there?
Yeah, so Sam and I, grew up in the Philadelphia area together. And when the pandemic started, we had been living in Los Angeles, the whole band actually, for 5 years or so. And when the pandemic started, everyone for various reasons there was a bit of a Mt.Joy diaspora of out of Los Angeles. Our bass player Michael and drummer Sotris stayed in Los Angeles. Jackie, our piano player, went back to Portland, which is where she was raised and where she's from. And then Sam and I went back to Philly. A lot of reasons for that, but I think part of it was just the severity of the situation and wanting to be close to family. But then once kind of got there, there's this realization that, being in a band like us that tours as much as we do, I was only spending a fraction of my time in Los Angeles anyways, and I was traveling so much. And then you realize what little time is left after that is spent with your family, and you rarely see the people that I guess in the end feel like they're the most important. So yeah, I think there was a perspective shift there where I was like, why not live in Philly? I'm going to be with this band the vast majority of the time, which we still are. We're still together most of the time, traveling or making things or whatever it is. And then when we're home, really feel like you're home kind of thing. So yeah, that's why we moved back to Philly and made the most of the record there. And yeah.
Very cool. And do you think now this being able to be back home and living that lifestyle, which it's probably new to a lot of musicians and artists, right? And everyone thinks being a central place, whether New York, LA, whatever it is, do you think it's sustainable now going forward? It allows you to stay close to home, keeps you grounded, or is it you still kind of feeling it out?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think if there's a shift in how this pandemic, we'll see. I'm really dubious as to whether things are ever going to go back to the way things were completely. Obviously, we've had this shift where things are less locked down and stuff like that, which is amazing. But I think people just learn to work remotely in so many ways where, if there's a meeting in Los Angeles, I don't physically have to be there unless I do, in which case I can probably fly. But I think it's gonna work. We'll see. And if it doesn't, that's fine. We'll adjust. But the good thing is Philly's an hour train ride from New York City. And that's where we just signed a new record deal. Our record label's based out in New York City, so if anything, I'm closer now than I was. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting, eh? When now, kind of a good thing that's come out of this is realizing how much you can do remotely. Mm-hmm. And if you think back, how much time we probably in any profession, any job, how much time was wasted probably meeting with people, whether it was prep meetings, intro meetings, breakdown, whatever it is. How much time was actually wasted being around people because everyone just felt that that's the way to do it. So I guess there is some positives come out of this.
For sure. I mean, yeah, there has to be. I think we've just learned we value our time more, which, again, that's that perspective thing. I think people, the pandemic was horrible. There's no mincing that, but I think it caused a lot of people to have a perspective shift on how they value their time.
Absolutely. Question regarding East Coast, West Coast. Are you just are you an East Coast guy through and through? Or did you like it out there when you were?
Oh, no. I mean, Los Angeles, California. I mean, California as a state is probably the most just diversely a word, beautiful state that America has. Yeah, it's an amazing place. Los Angeles is an amazing city. I love it there. I don't get into all the East Coast, West Coast. East Coast has got some amazing things going for it as well. Just more densely and sort of uniquely American, I think, in a lot of ways. Whereas I feel when I go to California, in a good way, most of the time, I feel I'm leaving America as I know it.
Yeah. It's a lot more diverse. It's there's so many different pockets and neighborhoods. I mean, you're in New York City. I mean, even Philly for that matter. We went down, Ricky and I. We were running a startup for a while. We actually went on a road trip. We passed through Philly, first time passing through. Mm-hmm. Philly does have a unique look about it, but it also feels like you could be in a suburb in any other East Coast. I mean, you could be in Toronto, really.
Sure.
The major landmarks once you're obviously in Philly, it is very Philadelphia. But yeah, the West Coast, I would agree with you. I think it's very you know, LA has a uniqueness about it. Part of it could look like Florida, and part of it could look like you're in maybe even part of downtown Philly or something like that.
Yeah, or like the Mediterranean. It's
very true.
It's a beautiful spot. Yeah, I love LA.
Awesome. In regards to like the, you know, the good, and you mentioned something like, you know, moving back to some sense of normalcy and all that stuff. Obviously, shows are coming back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, before we get into the Toronto stuff, because obviously you're playing in this great city, I did see, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is a future show. You guys sold out Red Rocks, or that happened already? That's coming up. That's awesome. And I'm bringing that up because I feel really bad Ricky's not here. Like, he's gonna listen to this, he's gonna be pissed because of both of us, like, I grew up in music and all that, but he is like a diehard fan of music, of any art. Like, he just appreciates the craft immensely, like, as do most people, not myself. But he's just like, he'll go to any concert, you can appreciate the music and the talent and the story. But knowing that you guys sold out Red Rock, he would have been like, it's the venue he's dreamed of going for so long. I bet you would be sitting here like losing his mind, getting ready to hop on a flight or book a ticket to go to the show. So I guess what I'm getting at my question is, like, in terms of Red Rocks, iconic venue, is that one that's like circled on your calendar? Do you view every show as a special show?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's on the bucket list. And, you know, this will be our second time. We had a special one where we played the first one just by luck of the calendar, when they opened it back up in May of, I guess 2021. And yeah, it's just dream come true. I mean, it's just such a special place, and it's just, for whatever reason, mostly probably because so many amazing shows have happened there, and there's such a special energy there that you know, I think every artist definitely puts it on the bucket list. And then I think it's a bit of a marker too. Like, once I realized that we were like you said, like selling out Red Rocks, I think you just sort of like, I sort of have this whole perspective on the Mt.Joy thing that it just, when you're in it, you can't really feel that it's growing in the way that it is. And then something like that sort of forces you to face the reality of, like, people are really, like, a lot of people are attaching themselves to this. And yeah, it's pretty, I think that part of it for artists too, where you're kind of like, you're measuring yourself against other people and bands that are, you know, on the schedule at Red Rocks. So for those two reasons, I think, sort of as a benchmark, and then also just getting to play such an amazing venue, it's amazing. That's
pretty cool. So you're saying, like, kind of like that point of like the micro and the macro and zooming out, like day to day, it doesn't feel, I mean, I'm sure it probably in some way feels, but you kind of like, you're making progress, but you don't really notice it. And then you hit these milestones in your career, and you kind of like it kind of gives you that, like, kind of, not the aha moment, but it's like, okay, we're getting somewhere here.
Yeah, totally. Like, I try to keep, as a person, I try to keep my, not like intentionally avoiding other people, but I keep my world pretty small. And, you know, from the beginning, my friends have known about Mt.Joy. So it's like nothing's really changed in my world of just like working on music and trying to keep it simple and all that stuff. So you're able to sort of, you know, I mean, you're seeing things happening. I'm not like completely blind, so the shows were selling out and stuff like that. But
absolutely.
But I think, yeah, exactly. You're able to, I don't know. For me, definitely the selling out Red Rocks was like it gives you some pause about what you're building and what you're doing.
Absolutely. What have been some of the other, those moments that have really just given you like a, you know, reality check or whatever it is that's, you know, through the last few years? Because you guys have started, like, 2016 was when they kind of got your start, and that's not that long in reality, you know, talking about, you know, people kind of becoming overnight sensations, but that's not a very, like, it's pretty fast considering too that touring shut down and all that for the past couple of years.
Sure.
So I would even say you guys have had a pretty quick rise, relatively speaking, but
sure.
Along the way, what were kind of those, any other ones that stand out?
Yeah, I mean, there've been a bunch. I'll say a lot of it's less like the size of the venue or whatever, but it's like the energy of the show or people singing back lyrics, and not pandering to the pod here, but truly the one that first comes to mind is we were in a van, you know, touring, and the first sort of round of shows, you know, it was pretty hit or miss, and I think that's sort of we were the first era of, you know, Spotify a band existing less in sort of physical plastic CDs and more in this like, I don't know that we're the first, but we're in this first wave, I guess, where Spotify was really impacting the way people were hearing our music. And therefore, I think big cities like Toronto, New York City, Chicago, et cetera, Philly.
Getting some hate from your hometown fans
exactly. there. We're more hip to it more quickly. And then, you would go to more secondary markets, tertiary markets, whatever it was, and you would play to no one. So it was this like really slow curve. It felt like in the beginning, the day-to-day grind of, driving the van around. But I remember coming to Toronto and we played at the, I want to say the Drake, or no, sorry, this one was at we have played at the Drake Hotel, but this one was at the Velvet Underground.
Yeah.
And sort of an unassuming thing where it was sold out, but which was great. But, you play the first note of the song and it's like this felt like I was in the Beatles, it was like everyone was singing every word to every song. And, just being in another country, obviously this is such an amazing city. And then that was sort of our introduction, I feel like, to like truly loving Toronto from a band standpoint, but then also obviously selfishly, I was like, wow, I love it. These people are amazing. And I think stuff like that was this moment where I was like, I've been to so many shows as a music fan. And like, that's sort of where I see myself first, is like as this fan of music. And so you can measure yourself as like, I don't know how many concerts I've physically been to where there was that sort of reaction to not just like the hit songs, but people singing sort of all of the songs and being so engaged in the performance. It sort of just gives you this feeling that like, if that can happen here, if we just keep pounding, we can build something, that's not just in those big cities.
Wow. That's pretty cool too, to think that, you guys have played such big shows in different venues, and Velvet Underground, I mean, obviously pretty, I'd say historic place for our city, but not like a huge venue by any means. So to have that much of an impact, I mean, says something about, I guess one is like that moment, but also two is, I guess your love and appreciation for the craft, rather than just again, going back to your early days of like not just doing it to make it, doing it because you love doing it.
Totally. Also, I think there's I think it was actually, we've toured with the Lumineers, which was awesome, but I think I'm stealing this from them because it's true. Forget which, whether it was Wes or Jared that said this, but one of them was saying that the hardest thing to do for a band is to sell 250 tickets. And what they meant by that is that like most sort of clubs that size, whether it's Velvet Underground, I don't know exactly how many tickets that is, but they're all around that. They're like in this, they call them 250 caps in the industry speak, where it's like, it's usually like a bar or, maybe it's sort of like not yet a rock club. Some of them are, but they're like, obviously smaller. And they have those all over the world. And the idea that those are the hardest to sell because, when you're just starting out and you're playing coffee shops or whatever, the idea that you would get 250 people, you don't know 250 people, right? So like you've got to have a thing happening that's broken through on some level to where you're able to sell out in a city, especially one that you're not from, 250 tickets consistently. And essentially that's like the barrier to entry, I think of it as like in terms of the touring industry. And once you're able to do that, there's this exponential growth, right? Because if you're selling 250, it's probably for a reason. You've broken through, you have song or songs, whatever it is. And at that point, there's this exponential growth possibility. It doesn't always happen. But if you're on that path and you're playing well and your songs are connecting, from 250, if they all enjoy the show, right? It's like they go home and they tell their friends. Now you have this grassroots movement throughout a wide, whether it's North America, the whole world, whatever it is. And yeah, I think ultimately then, and it is true, the next tour you're probably playing the 500, the next tour you're playing the 1,000, 1,200s. So you can work your whole career to get to this 250, and then 4 tours later, you're playing history in Toronto because just that the way that the word of mouth works in the town, not to mention the sort of like podcast, radio, media complex starts to attach to things that are selling 250, that are moving
Absolutely.
in their city. So the hardest thing to do is to get to that velvet underground zone and have that moment, because you sort of know, like, if they're all singing and having a good time, we're gonna get to the opera house. Like,
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I did not know that. That's really interesting, and it does make sense. Obviously, that 250, because I mean, you can definitely, a 250 room doesn't probably look that big either when you're in it, but when it's packed with people, it also probably looks intimate, but also super busy. And I guess to your point, that exponential growth. I mean, you guys are playing 2 shows in Toronto, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that just goes to show you, I guess, to your point of that kind of exponential growth. Do you think that was is this now as a byproduct of that? I mean, obviously you guys have grown a lot in that time, I guess, substantially, but do you think that also, because that show was so impactful, does that feel like a place where you think like, oh, this probably led to this? Or
on some level, it has to be true. Yeah, it has to be true. I mean, because again, and like so much of even getting to sit down and speak with you, it's like people, it's harder to get. I know, because I've tried on my own, right? Like before I went to LA, like it's almost impossible to get anyone to spend their time, nor should they, right? Like helping you take those next steps and reach your audience, or radio stations, or whatever it is that you're trying to expand your audience. Those people aren't going to invest in you until they realize there's something that could come back their way, and that's the quid pro quo that is any sort of marketing venture, which ultimately is what bands are. They're at this point, they're obviously musicians and everything else, but on the business side, they're a marketing company for what it is they're trying to sell, which is music. And I think, I've sort of lost the thread here, but I think
you're good.
It's true. It's those moments are when people are brought, your label's working to get the people to come to the show, and if they see that, then they know, like, okay, I can get out ahead of this. I can be attached to this band, because maybe they are going to do nothing, but maybe they're going to be some huge band that we can say we were there first for.
Absolutely. In regards to like the helping out and all that stuff, you can always come on the Pulse podcast. You're always welcome here, and I'm sure Ricky would love to sit down with you. Sorry, Rick, I know you probably listen to this, man. It's we're having a good time here without you, buddy. I wanted to ask too, because you said something about the Spotify aspect, and you guys are one of the earlier ones. That in conjunction with like the kind of the quid pro quo. Do you think that the quid pro quo aspect is being a little bit like reduced, because now with Spotify, anybody can get their music out there? And do you think that that's also helped you guys, or I don't really know here what I'm asking, but like, do you noticing like it's the artists are getting more empowered, and like, for your career, for example, are you able to kind of control your own destiny a little bit more? Or have you not found there's much of a difference than what it used to be?
Yeah, I think it's probably changing all the time, because I think even the Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, I should list them all so that we make sure we get equal love or something. But
absolutely.
But I think they're changing. I think in our career, since we started, with Astrovan sort of going viral on Spotify to now, I know that they've changed a lot. In part because I think they've gone from like a thing where you're right, where everyone could upload, and then there was this moment where they, I guess playlists and all this stuff that really was completely foreign to me and to everyone, is now like everyone knows the game, and in the beginning, I think when, a few people know the rules to a board game or something, whatever you want to make the analogy, it's easy for them to clean up all the chips. But now I think everyone is aware of how the game works. And so it's changing. It's changing how people approach, whether it's getting on playlists is now like this very, and it probably always was, but it feels very political and very, almost like the job of a label now has switched from maybe not necessarily so much about radio, although still it's there, of course, but now there's this other wing that's like, they're trying to influence the Spotify world. And it's almost just the industry has just moved in a way where I don't know that it's any easier than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, because now they're just fighting over this sort of digital ad space. And, you know, I think but one thing that is true is that unlike maybe in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, your music, getting your music into that platform is still way easier. That hurdle is way lower, I think, than, you know, driving to this record labels and basically throwing your CD or whatever it was to people who are very unlikely to listen to it. Yeah. I think they're still very unlikely to listen to it, but now at least it's a link inside of Spotify.
The barrier to kind of get that like visibility has been reduced, but to your point, that quid pro quo maybe didn't disappear; it just shifted to another avenue, I guess. So, you know, in the early days, maybe getting up there, because you guys have quite a few streams. Mm-hmm. I did not know this. I actually found this out today. I was looking into it. You guys have, correct me if I'm wrong, 500 million. Is that right? Half a billion? Yeah, we got a head nod over there.
A head nod.
Danielle's usually here to fact check too. So again, I'm even don't have my fact checker, but I appreciate it, Ali. Thank you.
I honestly, I
that's
don't
pretty
know that,
crazy. That's
awesome.
A big number.
That's
like
awesome.
That is a big number. I mean, in terms of like those milestones of like reality checks, I mean, I'm sure getting the first few hundred must have been crazy. And
totally. No, it's crazy. I think you sort of lose it's crazy. We're super lucky, and it's hard to even know what that means. You know, it's like these numbers get so big. I don't mean that like these numbers get so big, but it's amazing. And most of those are me. And yeah, no, it's amazing.
That's awesome. Well, in terms, like, that's a good point. Like it's, you know, hard to put in perspective. Like, you know, 500 million of anything sounds like a lot, which it is, objectively it is. But to that point too, it's, you know, you're saying it's hard to know what it means. And I think I kind of understand what you're saying there. And in that regard, like in terms of like the meaningful aspect, you mentioned the show, but of like everything that you do, or you and the band do, like what really does like bring you the most joy? I didn't even like, not to be ironic with Mt.Joy, but I just dawned on me. But like, yeah, like is it, you know, being in Montana recording? Is it playing Velvet Underground? Is it, you know, playing Red Rocks? Like what's that thing that kind of makes you guys tick?
For me, I just like love writing music. It's like a thing that I've done, like I said, for a long time unsuccessfully, and then there's this like short period of the amount of time that I've been writing music that I've had like this quote unquote success. So I think it's just the feeling that people are being moved by and like respect what it is that, you know, me and the band are putting out. Like I've thought a lot about that, especially over the pandemic. Like, you know, you start making money, you start, you know, like having these other indicators of like success, and it feels like those are like the steal from an Eagles quarterback quote. It's like that's the rat poison, you know. It's like that's the stuff that you could eat up that seems like the delicious treat of your hard work or whatever, but it just is like this never ending. People are always going to argue about money. There's always going to be this sort of like negative aspect to like all the fruit of what seems like the fruit of your labor. But I think the true fruit is just like, you know, all that stuff's amazing and important, but the true fruit is like, those are people hopefully connecting with and like respecting you. Like there's this like intangible that sort of doesn't get measured in the number, big or small. That's just like the sort of like human desire to be loved or be respected by people is like way, way beyond anything that you could ever achieve. And I think there's a lot of like certain types of acts that get even more streams and then but like, does that equate to that? Like what does that ultimately mean for you? Like when it's all said and done, like, which is like all of this stuff. And that's like another thing I think the pandemic showed is like, because like shows get taken away, and Mt.Joy is like a business that certainly like the 500 million streams is incredible and all this stuff. But if we can't go out and play shows, if all that were to dry up, like I'm not sure, but from my maybe educated opinion on the business, it's like I don't think we'd be a thing anymore. But then would there still be people that would like play our music to their kids and or like would there still be this thing there that's like sort of, even if the business dies, that will stay there? And to me, like that's what we're trying to build. It's just this thing that's like people respect what we do. They want to share it, not because they want us to make money or like get more streams, but because they have like some sort of important attachment to it.
So that's really really cool, really like commendable. It seems like you're trying to build something that's not, like lasting, but also has some sort of like connection, I guess, with people. It's beyond the numbers and beyond the 500 million, if you will, and all that stuff. You make a good point. Like I'm sure like a lot of people and a lot of the world probably had a bit of a reality check when the pandemic hit, right? You could anything, your job, your career, what brings you happiness and excitement can be just taken like that. And I guess if the wrong things are giving you those markers or those indicators that you're doing something good or doing something well or successful, and that's taken away, then what is left at the end of the day?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, why are you doing it? What's your why? What's important to you? You know, it's like if you want to make money, I promise you should put the guitar away, because it's your chances of making lots of money with that guitar are so low, and there's so many ways to make money, and so many people making more money than me who I'm better at guitar than. So you know, it's like
Fair.
It's just so true.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, on that note then, like, you know, you said I guess, correct me again if I'm wrong, your why is kind of like to have that thing that's lasting with people that they want to show their kids. When you're writing music, are you writing from a place of like, things that have happened to you and things that are meaningful to you? Or is it things that are trying to be more common that people might go through? Like what gives you that inspiration, or what allows you to kind of have that connection? Or is it just you write for the love of it and you hope that they're going to love it as much as you?
Yeah, I think for me, I've just always, like I said, I've always written for this joy of writing, and I think a lot of that's mental health related. Like it's like sort of this meditation that I can do, or I write like almost every day, regardless. And it's just like you're building something. It's like I feel like some people like play with Legos or something like that. You know, it's this sort of sometimes completely mindless. Just I'm building these things, and they're instead of Legos, they're songs, and I put them together pretty slowly. Like I have thousands and thousands of voice notes in my phone, or things just kind of scribbled, and yeah, just like the building things to build them. I think for me, it's mostly like it's just this cleanse of my subconscious. You know, sometimes I have no idea what the song's really about, but then maybe like a year later, I'll reflect on it and I'll know exactly what it's about. And I think that's this cool, like, for a lot of songwriters, like it's just this study of your own subconscious or what's on your mind. And I think for me, when I try to like, which I've been successful with in the very few times, but when I try to like write a song about the Oreos on the table or something, like I feel like you and I are going to be equally good at that.
Yeah.
But if I'm writing something that only I can reach into, and I have this practice of sort of, it's almost like meditating, I think, of just like, you know, just putting stuff on the page and arranging it, of course. That's maybe where my skill set comes in, and what separates me from even just another songwriter. Like, not that I'm any better than them, but they can't do that, right? That's the sort of thing that I have that is unique to me.
So you find you're someone that like you just naturally you like to get your thoughts out like on a daily basis, like whatever's kind of in your head, whether it's music related or anything. Like you're just someone who has to like kind of clear it from your mind, empty that space out, but also just to kind of keep it and you don't lose it.
Try to. I mean, it's harder on tour actually, but try to just, even if it's not like lyrical content, just playing guitar and just messing around with chords and trying new things and just creating. I think like being a creator is like such a amazing job in that sense, that you can just make things. And yeah, I'm like super drawn to just trying to create something that didn't exist the day before.
Very cool. And you say you kind of do it, you try to do it every day. Would you consider yourself someone who's pretty consistent, like from when you started to like, do you every single day you have kind of these like, I don't know, pillars or routines that you do, whether it regards to music or anything to do with mental health, your physical, whatever it is? Do you have things that are like non-negotiables? Like you just every single day you do them? Or you try your best to?
Yeah, I was gonna say there are definitely things that I'd like to be non-negotiables, like on the physical health side. But for music, I mean, I sort of go in these waves where, you know, I'm super motivated, and we talked about this before. Like I think there's a lot for Mt.Joy. And then for myself personally, there's a lot of opportunity right now to, you know, have good songs be heard by people, right? So it's like I have a lot of just reason to write and keep that going. And I think for the most part, I do it every day. I'm like in a good way, I think, like an insomniac that like sort of just spends my girlfriend will at home will go to bed because she has like a normal job and a normal sleep schedule. And then there's this period of like 3 or 4 hours where it's kind of just me in the house, and that's when I do my best everything. So I'll just pick up a guitar and hopefully just for the joy of it, like pretty much every day, just play guitar and try not to put too much pressure on it, because I feel like that's that whole thing where if you're always going to the session and the label's calling and they're like, you ready for the 2:30? It's like, I feel like if I'm just writing all the time, whatever the stay ready so you don't have to get ready kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. Do you and then because of that, then do you feel like still to this day it doesn't feel like a job to you? It doesn't feel like work, like you're doing it kind of on your schedule? Or does it have those days where you wake up and it's
totally? I mean, I think touring is just that aspect of it where it's like it's just, I don't think humans are meant to do it, so I think it just wears you down. And I think when you're tired, you're not really your best self. And so there are those days, of course, but I think it's just physical exhaustion more than like the actual like mental desire to do. I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. It's just, if you've only slept 3 hours over the last 2 or 3 days, it's hard. You're like less than a human at that point.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to keep seeing like the forest from the trees when you're there. You're like, this is what I wanted to do my whole life, but I'm fucking exhausted. I can't. Like, I'm just struggling to keep going.
100%, yeah.
Okay, fair. There is something else that I wanted to touch on as well. You guys, it was for the last album, right? It was around the time when I don't want to go too deep in this if you don't want to, but you guys raised a bunch of money when all this stuff was happening with the George Floyd stuff, and you donated a bunch of money from the album. That was the previous, not the.
Yeah, that was the last album.
Yeah, what I mean, besides the fact that obviously there was a lot going on around that time, like what inspired you guys to kind of take that initiative, and kind of support the cause?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for us, I think, not to be too cliche, but the first thing we are is like citizens of the world and citizens of, our communities. And that, we've talked about it a bit, but that whole, the last 2 or 3 years, but in specifically that moment, like, I feel like it was one of the most important moments in, global history, specifically, obviously, American history. And then also, I was living in a big city at the time, and you see the way that your community is, rallying around the cause. And it's such an important, I think not everyone, unfortunately, but a lot of people like to think of themselves as the type of person that if they saw something that wasn't right or was unjust, that they would stand up for other people. And I think it's that simple. I think, here's a moment. What are you going to do? I think for us, it was pretty easy because we had a platform and there was so much leadership. We weren't leaders in that at all. I think we were, if anything, unconsequential followers of like a really important moment with like really important leaders. And yeah, I don't think we deserve like any credit for that other than to say that, there were just so many people doing amazing work and we were just following.
Fair. More of my follow-up question on that is like when you're at the level you guys are at and, being a world-renowned band and artist, do you guys like, obviously it's objectively the right thing to do, is being humans at the earth, doing something like this, but do you guys get when you do stuff like this, like any initiatives, any causes, does it good come with the bad? Is it overwhelmingly like this is the right thing to do? Does it affect anything with, I don't know if the right word is to affect anything in your fan base. I don't want to put in the spot like that, but like, do you get like flack for taking stands at times in that regard, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think like in the last like I keep saying this last 2 year period, but it truly has been a pretty transformational period, not just for me personally, but I think the band has taken this leap too. So that's why I probably keep referring to the last 2 years. But yeah, I mean, the internet sucks, but people suck. But I think like the reality is like if you're confident in your mission and this is not just like a cliche thing. I think like I was just giving this advice to like someone who is a fan who's on television all the time and was talking to me about, having to fight these people in the mentions and this and that. And I was telling her the same thing. It's like, I really think there's a thing you can do where you realize that like these people being mad at you is a byproduct of you doing the right thing. And then you can either fight them, but it's not a physical fight. So you can't like submit them and like have the ref come in and be like, you win, It's like, there's really it's an infinite scroll of just doom with these people whom you're not going to convince, whether it's cause related or whether they hate your music, whatever reason they're coming at you. You're not going to convince them. You're not going to change their mind. And I think it's just important to like have your sights set on like what your goals are and what you're trying to do. And then they can have their goals and whatever, and you just know that like over the long war, them, whether it's not believing in science or not believing in equality, whatever, is like ultimately a losing battle, and they're gonna die in a hole just like you, but not as many people will care about them.
Yeah, that's a fair. I know. Don't worry. I know. I understand what you're.
Something like that.
Yeah, I understand what you're getting at there. That actually maybe was my train of thought. I had one other question I wanted to ask.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Oh, that's what I was gonna ask you. In regards to like kind of the mentions, and to wrap this point up, do you are you someone who kind of stays out of it? Like to your point, I'm not gonna try and change the world here. All I can do is try to make the world a better place with my actions and do what I believe. Or do you kind of get into it with people at times that kind of grind your gears? And
I'm human, so occasionally if someone like crosses the line, you feel, and you're in a you're in one of those days where you choose violence. Occasionally you get drawn into it, but I think it escalates almost. I think, and this shows something about these people, whether it's like the Trumpers of the world or conspiracy theorists or people who are disseminating misinformation, like they all come from this same sort of cloth of like they just genuinely don't have good faith arguments to make. Whereas like if I'm arguing with someone and then I realize that they're not trying to personally attack me, like then I think I can actually like engage in like a battle of wits or something. But if it's more like, you suck or something about my mom or something, it's like, what does this have to do with the vaccine? It's like, it just so quickly descends into this like ad hominem, like you are the problem or like whatever, that you sort of can quickly pivot to like, all right,
Yeah, I've had enough. It's interesting on that, like just to throw out that point. It's funny how if you like, you can have an opinion and you can respect someone from a different opinion, but you can quickly tell like, am I going to get anywhere here? Because you can start discussing, this is what I believe or this is what the facts are, and someone hurls out, well, you're an idiot. Well, okay, that's what's the point? That doesn't explain if my point is wrong or right or what we're talking about here. And then it quickly allows you to kind of just like change direction and say,
well, if the only way for them to make their point is for you to be dumb, then the point is still standing.
Absolutely. Listen, I think we're getting near the end of it. I know you guys have a hard stop. I don't want to drag too much longer. Matt, I really appreciate you joining me, not us. It's been a blast, and we have one last thing we always ask, but before I get there, kudos to you, man, for you and the band, for kind of the trajectory you guys are on, for going from Velvet Underground to 2 shows in at History, obviously a new venue, or just recently opened, yeah. So that should be a pretty exciting time. Hopefully there's more. I'm assuming there's more than 250 at this venue. So and 2 shows, that's great. What's next for you guys? Like, what is next for you, for Mt.Joy? What's on the horizon next, like 6-12 months kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean we're about to put out a few new songs and ultimately a new album, which I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I'm saying it. And we worked our butts off on this album, and we're so just genuinely, that's what's on my mind. Just like so excited to get this music out. Every band and especially songwriter is going to say this, but I think it's our best album we've ever made. And yeah, so there's just this intense excitement, just like the waiting, you know, just waiting for people to hear what we've created. And yeah, and then we have a tour this summer, and we're obviously on tour right now. And I think that's as much as my brain can hold right now.
Fair enough. Well, again, appreciate you coming in. We'll let you guys get out of here. Thanks everybody for listening and tuning in, and hopefully you guys can make it to the Mt.Joy shows in Toronto. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right, guys. See you later.